So again, welcome everybody to the Dhammaloka. This is the time now when I give a talk. Sometimes I follow suggestions, but more often I just follow events which have happened in the last few hours or few days. And it's a case that you often see that too many people, they have so many problems in their life. And many of those problems they come to a monk for, ask Ajahn Brahm or one of the other monks or the nuns to try and help them with solutions to their problems. And sometimes I wonder why they do that, especially with marriage problems. Because, as you all know, I've never been married. So what would I know? You ask troubles about working in a factory or in an office in modern Australia. What would I know? I've never been to work for 42 years. I don't have any superannuation. I don't pay tax because I don't have any money to pay tax in the beginning. So you live a very strange life as a monk. And I often joke that one of the reasons people come and ask monks this must be, the only thing I can think of is we're cheap. We don't charge any money. But there's obviously something more than that, otherwise people wouldn't keep on coming. They won't keep on sending these emails, say they listen to these talks every week, and it really helps them solve the problems of their lives. Something is happening there. Somehow or other you're managing to connect with very deep wisdom, and to allow that deep wisdom to resonate with other people, to solve the problems in a way that psychologists, psychiatrists, even doctors can't do. And one of the reasons of that is learning just how to make the mind so still and so beautiful that there all your problems are answered. It's interesting that when you look at sort of Buddhism, it's not just arguing about this dogma or that sort of idea which we have in Buddhism. Just monks don't do arguments. We don't do debates, because all those debates, two people arguing, they're coming from the wrong place, as far as I can understand. They're coming from the wrong place, from the place of the intellect, rather than from the heart of compassion and stillness, which is one of the reasons why as a monk, and here I invite you to do the same, is to develop your heart rather than the head. Because you know what happens in this world, that people go to schools, and there what we learn in our education institutions is how to think. In fact, we learn to think so much that we can't stop thinking anymore. And because we can't stop thinking, we just can't see the truth. And a lot of times we argue with people we should be loving and caring for. And I can understand that sometimes as a monk. This happens to me so often. You have to do some sort of marriage counselling. Two people who have known for a long time, they're having difficulty living together. And I've known both of those people since they were small. And you look at the girl, she's a beautiful girl, a wonderful person, a great character. You look at the guy, he's a wonderful guy, a marvellous character, a really good heart. I can see the goodness in them, but they can't. And the reason is because they've just been lost in thoughts, and they forgot just the kindness, compassion, forgiveness in their hearts. Sometimes that when we think too much, we get so tired we can't think clearly at all. So I'm going back to a story which I mentioned for the monks last Wednesday. And it's a story which is in one of my books, which is like a deeper story about Buddhism, but it's a really interesting and important one on how to solve problems in life, how to develop more happiness, more joy, more kindness. And that is a story of, reminded today, 33 years of Bodhinyana Monastery. I was there obviously from the very beginning. And for the first 7 years I worked very hard there. I was the main builder. My name is on many of the building licenses for many of those huts and kitchens and halls which you see at Bodhinyana Monastery. And actually even this hall here, it was my hand which actually designed this building. An architect came and messed it up, but basically the floor plan was my design. But anyway, I did a lot of work in those days. But it was 7 years I'd been up and down that hill where our monastery in Serpentine is situated. Up and down that hill maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Going to my business as being a Buddhist monk, a spiritual guide, builder as well. So much business to be done. Up and down that hill, but always in a car. And there was this one occasion, I think it was roughly 7 years after I'd first went to stay there. After that 7 years, it was a beautiful spring morning, no flies yet. And if you want any flies, we've got plenty spare in Serpentine. You can go up there on the weekend and collect some, thank you. But there over in Serpentine, a beautiful, warm, sunny morning, plenty of time. So I asked my driver, please let me out of the car. I want to walk up that hill. And for me it's very difficult to get exercise because I'm such a senior monk now that everybody actually just wants to give me a lift. Sometimes they give me a lift in new cars because it's called blessing the car. I don't know if it really works, but that's what they do. Some of the traditions in Buddhism are very, very weird. I try to make use of them as best as I can, but the custom is because monks, especially senior, famous monks, we're supposed to have very good karma, much better than ordinary lay people. So our karma's way up there. So a lot of times when I was a young monk in Thailand, they would always put the monks in the front of the bus. The idea was that our good karma will protect everybody sitting behind from front-on crashes. And I didn't really mind that, but sometimes, this happened once, accurate story, I was travelling from Chonburi to Bangkok, not a long distance, only 2 hours, thank goodness, because as soon as I got in this big bus, the bus driver smiled, he didn't want to take any money, he just put me right in the front seat, about that far from the windscreen, because there was a movie on that bus which he really wanted to watch. But he was scared of crashes, so he always had to pay attention to the road. Now I was there taking care of crashes. He could watch the movie as much as he wanted. And I was watching all these big trucks and cars just hurtling towards our bus as it was going over the road to the other side. Fortunately, we survived. So it was true. But I tried that once when I was flying in Thai Airways. I was in economy class and I told the flight attendant, sometimes aircraft crash into mountains, so why don't you put me up front and then I can protect everyone behind? Because up front is first class on his business. I thought it was a very strong argument, but they wouldn't accept it. So I had to stay in economy. But anyhow, that's some of the silly things. So they always want to to try and help you and serve you. Sometimes you help and serve too much, not allowing me to get exercise. So there I was. I forced the driver, let me out. I want to walk. And so he let me walk. And I'd walked up that hillside. Many of you driving up there when you come to visit Bodhinyana Monastery or go to Jhana Grove for retreats. But this was the first time in 7 years I'd walked up that hillside. And this is what happened. It was an amazing experience. First of all, as I was walking, I could not recognize my surroundings at all. I ask you to try this. If you've always gone from your house to the shopping center or even to the post box, always in your car, one day try just walking from your house to the end of your road and just see how different it is and how many more things you see which you've never seen before. Because that's what happened to me. I saw so many more things I'd never noticed before. So many I could not recognize that hillside on which I'd lived for 7 years. It looked totally different than anything I'd ever recalled, which shocked me. It shocked me so much that I just stopped walking and stood and stared in disbelief. And as I stood, the hillside changed once more. When I stood and just stared, I saw so much more detail, and what I saw looked incredibly beautiful, much more beautiful than I'd ever seen before. Even the greens of the grass were almost like fluorescent. It's a beautiful, deep-coloured green, and there's so many different shades of that green. And the bark on the trees, and the little rocks with the lichen on the rocks, and all the little wildflowers, and all the stream at the bottom of the valley. It was actually delightful. It was like heaven. How come I'd never seen that before? And I had to carry on walking. And as I was walking, I tried to reflect on what had happened. And a simile came up, which was so obvious when you think about it, but so meaningful in just the way we live our lives. When I was looking through the window of a moving car, the light which hit the back of my eye, the retina, did not have enough time to complete a proper chemical reaction. I saw an image, and then another image came up to my eye, dislodged the first, and then another. Because seeing light on the back of the eye is a simple chemical reaction. None of those reactions had time to complete. So I missed out so much detail. And also the colours which formed hadn't time to properly form. So when I got out of a car and walked, my eyes had more time to see what was out there. So you saw much more, and the colours were richer. But when I stopped and stood perfectly still, that was the very best, because then what I saw was complete, and the colours were richer than I'd ever expected. I never remember colours like that. Because I was still, everything had time to form in my eye, and my mind had enough time to explore it. And my goodness, it was just so incredibly beautiful. And I realized that many times in our life, it's like we are rushing around so fast. It's like living in a moving car. Our body is that moving car. We're going so fast from one thing to another that we don't really notice everything which is around us. We only get small details of them. And what we see is like not fully formed. Colours which are pastel rather than deep and rich, which is their nature. And from that experience, I recognized just the importance of slowing down. Maybe you can't slow down every day of your life, but there are certain days, like weekends, like holidays, where quite frankly you don't have to do so much. You don't have to, but why do we keep doing so much? I say mostly because of fear, because we don't really, not used to slowing down, which is one of the reasons why I always say, and I said this in a recent meditation retreat, you can always notice there are 3 stages, 3 levels of any sort of development in the mind in Buddhism. And those 3 levels, I say, are recognition, familiarity, and thirdly, ease. The first thing is you've got to recognize what I'm talking about, what stillness, what peace really is, what beauty is like, to recognize what freedom is. And once you recognize it, then you get familiar with it over a while, and then you don't tense up against silence and peace and freedom. Again, sometimes you offer people lots of peace and freedom, from the problems of life, but they don't take it. They prefer living with their problems. Many times I've counseled people struggling with grief, the loss of a loved one, and they cannot sort of overcome that simply because they don't want to let go of their grief. Sometimes they have problems in a marriage, and I give them great solutions which work for other people, but they don't do it because they don't want to let go of the problems in the marriage. It could be sabotage, it could be lack of self-esteem. You have people with addictions, and they just give them great ideas of how to overcome them. They won't do that because they don't want to. They're afraid. It's a simile of the person, the prisoner, being in jail. Tomorrow they're going to end their sentence and they can walk out a free person, and they don't want to. They're afraid of what they don't feel comfortable with. They've got used to jail. They've got used to being in prison. They've got used to being angry. It's one of the biggest difficulties. So what we do is learn how to, just recognize what the opposite is, freedom. Just have day release from prison. Just have a little bit of meditation to feel what it's like not to get angry. Have a little bit of relaxation somewhere, even if it's massage or yoga, just so you can recognize what it's like to be peaceful. And then after a while, you get used to that, familiar to it, and at ease with it, which means you can actually accept that into your life. And it means you can be a peaceful person. You don't have to rush around so fast in life. And what are we rushing around for? I don't know what we're searching for, why we're doing so much in this world. And unfortunately, it is a crazy world. Why? What do you need? How much do you really need? Now what we're really rushing around for is, again, that peace and that happiness, that joy and that love. What do you really want? And the lovely thing to notice is that when you start slowing down in life, or just take pauses, moments in life, then all that peace, that beauty, that happiness, which is why we work so hard for, why we try and get a job, why we try and get a family, all those things which we strive for and work so hard for, when you slow down and stop, you see you have it already. You just slow down and you see as much beauty and happiness as you could ever want. But it takes a lot of courage to slow down and stop. And the other wonderful thing is once a person does slow down and stop and just see how beautiful the hillside on which you live truly is, because you can now appreciate it, it does mean that we respect one another far more. It's not just the beauty of a person's figure or face or hair, it's the beauty of who they are. And quite frankly, maybe because I meditate too much, that whenever I see all you people here, I can see into your hearts, and it's absolutely beautiful what's inside of there. And that's just how I've trained myself over many years. It's very hard for me to get angry and reject anybody these days, simply because it's so easy to slow down and stop and see what was once, just an ordinary hillside, just become just brilliant in its colors and its textures and its array of amazing qualities. You appreciate one another much more. You know what it's like when you first fall in love with somebody and you can see all their amazing qualities, they look so beautiful. That's like getting in deep meditation again, but it's not just with one person, it's with everybody. Just to see how beautiful they are. And the amazing thing also is that once you see how beautiful other people are, they start to see that in themselves. That is one of the little tricks which I try and give to people when they have to deal with difficult people. There's many so-called difficult people in the world, but there's no real such thing as a difficult person, it's just the way we perceive them. And all one needs to do is to change that perception and look for the beauty in them, because I know that beauty is in there. All I need to do is look at the beauty in the hillside to slow down and stop, and it's there for sure. And once you see the beauty in the other person, they show it back to you. recently somebody said, I'm sure they're probably here, but I can't remember, it was last week or 2 weeks ago, they say they tried this with their boss in the office. They just got a new boss. Actually, the new boss was one of their colleagues before, now got promoted. It's amazing when someone gets promoted, they actually change from being a friend to being like a Margaret Thatcher. I always remember Margaret Thatcher. She said, cabinet ministers, there are some you can beat down, there are some you can wear down, and the others you grind down. That's a really amazing woman. Grinding cabinet ministers down. Ooh. But there are some people like that in your office. But instead of looking at that aspect of her boss, I told her to look at the beautiful side. And so this amazing woman, she went to her, and it's the boss usually being scowling at her and complaining, just asked her, do you want a cup of coffee? I'm just going down to the coffee machine. And the boss was so taken aback, apparently, changing the attitude to a person, looking at the kindness. But my favourite story in that, from many, many, many years ago, I say all these things, there's beauty in everybody, and just like you can see the beauty in the hillside when you slow down, it's there. And if you can see it in other people, they show it back to you. I used to tell that story in Carnot Prison Farm many, many years ago, over 30 years ago. And one of the prisoners in there, one of the things I used to like about teaching in prison, they were honest to you, they were straight up to you, and they said, that's bullshit, Ajahn Brahm. They wouldn't sort of mince around, they wouldn't be polite like you have to be here. They gave you instant feedback, and it was honest. That's why I like it. Sometimes here people say, great talk, Ajahn Brahm, and they go outside, that was a rubbish talk this evening. But in jail they've got nothing to lose. And so that honesty, that straight up, straight down quality was something I admired in that institution. But anyway, this prisoner said, oh, that's rubbish. And so I always like to stand my ground because my experience and what I believe in, just what I found to be true, I will stand up for. And so I said to this prisoner, I said, really? He said, yeah. Okay, let's have a challenge. And I asked this prisoner, who is the worst person you know in this prison? The person you hate the most, the one you despise the most. He didn't have to think very long because he said there was a senior prison officer, who everybody regarded as a dog. Really, that's actually being a bit mean to dogs. But this particularly, he gave me an example of what had happened the week before. I remember him telling me this story. That this one prisoner, hadn't had a visitor for weeks, for months, because, Carnot Prison Farm, past our monastery. If you think our monastery is hard to get to, this is a little bit further into the forest. There's no public transport. You have to have your own vehicle or get a ride with somebody else. And it's very difficult. So eventually this one prisoner had a visitor. And this prison officer was in charge that day and saw this prisoner had a visitor, just came in, but you have to check in, fill out all the forms before you can go to the visitor's area. So straight away he saw this prisoner, didn't tell him the visitor had come for him, but sent him to a furthest part of the prison farm he possibly could go, to a place where the PA system didn't reach. So when this prisoner was away, and after his visitor had checked in, on the PA system they announced, there's a visitor for prisoner so-and-so. He never replied because he couldn't hear. They repeated it, and then they sent someone to look for him. By the time they found him and brought him back a couple of hours later, I'm very sorry, visiting hours are over. Better luck next time. It was just like a mean thing to do for a prisoner who was having his first visit for months, and this really rotten prison officer, just out of spite, had denied him just a little bit of friendship. So that's the sort of person we were dealing with, and I say, this is wonderful. We have a very good challenge on here. And especially the one of the prisoners in my group, his job in the prison was to serve tea and coffee to this guy every day. Marvelous. Now I asked him every time you give him a cup of tea or coffee, put a lot of love into that tea. Find out how much milk he wants, how much sugar, what type of coffee he likes, how strong the tea. Really make it important to try and really give this officer, this dog, the best cup of tea or coffee you can. And I would go every week to that group, and every week I'd ask him, how's it going? He said, hopeless. Every week he'd say, I really tried my hardest to actually make the most perfect cup of coffee for this guy, and he just ignores me. Every time I put it on the table, enjoy your coffee, sir, he doesn't even turn around and acknowledge my existence on this planet. That's the sort of person he is. And so, it was a very tough, but good on this one prison officer, this one prisoner, because he really kept on going. He kept on going so much that eventually we got our breakthrough. And I remember him telling me this with a big smile on his face. He said this one day, it's after about 3 months, he made him a cup of coffee. He found out the coffee he likes, the right amount of milk and sugar, and he presented this coffee to this prison officer and said, I hope you enjoy your coffee, sir. And the prison officer didn't move, but said, That grunt was the breakthrough. That was the crack in the wall. As soon as he said that, I knew that, and all the prison officers knew it. We got that first stage, acknowledgement. And it was only a couple of weeks afterwards, very quickly afterwards, that he managed to find some biscuits or some sandwiches, which his prison officer really liked, handed it with a really nice cup of tea, which he put his very best into. Here you are, sir. Have a nice cup of tea, and I got you special sandwiches. And this prison officer turned around to this prisoner and said, thank you. And I was told, because and it's probably still the same today, at that time there was a very, very strong grapevine throughout all the prisons in Western Australia. And that thank you went all around the prison population in Western Australia, so I was told by the prisoners. They couldn't believe that this dog had said thank you to a prisoner. I won. Or rather, this way of turning somebody around, seeing something beautiful in them, caring for them, and that's what they bring you back, because that's there all the time. That's inside the human being. That's inside of you. So, a lot of the time, if it's inside of other people, it's inside of you too. If you can only slow down a little bit and see what's inside of you, no one would ever get depressed. No one would ever have lack of self-esteem. No one would ever think they're not good enough. If you're going fast and thinking, yes, you can't see the beautiful hillside. It's one of the reasons why we teach people to meditate here, first of all. That's the most important. All these talks afterwards, they're helpful, but actually to do it and to feel that yourself, for you to go so slow, and you look at yourself, and you say, wow, I've never seen these good qualities inside of me before. Just like I've never seen those beautiful rocks in the hillside before. To go really slow and say, wow, those pieces of grass are incredibly beautiful. And then you start to look at yourself and just to see how amazingly beautiful and gorgeous you actually are. And that is an eye-opener. That is incredible. What, me too? Yes, you too. When Buddhism says that everyone's got the Buddha inside of them, Buddha nature, that's not just a joke. That's absolutely true. And how do we find that? We just open ourselves up. There's another little story I usually give on retreats about, again, what I mean, about the beauty inside of a human being. And it's the story of the 1,000-petal lotus. Many of you may have heard, even though we're Theravada Buddhists here, it doesn't really matter, we do all sorts of Buddhism here. In Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism, the most famous mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum. I'm sure that many people, even Christians and atheists, and even Donald Trump has probably heard that. But It's amazing, you just say Donald Trump, you get a laugh. 2 laughs now. But anyway, few people actually know what that means. And what it really means is like it's reverence, worship to the jewel in the heart of the lotus. That's what it means, Mani Padme, the jewel in the lotus. But few people understand what it really refers to. Why is that such an important little saying in Buddhism? And the answer is in the simile of a lotus. A lotus is closed up at night time. And if any of you see a lotus at night time and go close to it and examine it, you see the outside is very rough and very dirty, because the outside has to withstand the wind, the dust, the dirt of life. But you also know in the early morning when the sun comes up, it is the warmth and the light of the sun hits that outermost petal of the lotus, warms it up, so it opens up. And inside that very dirty, tough, outermost layer of the lotus, you find the first of the petals, the beautiful ones. But even the outermost one is still thick and not that fragrant. But now the outermost sheath is opened. It allows the sun, the warmth and the light of the sun to hit the next layer, so that can open up. So the next one can open up. So the next one can open up. They open up layer by layer. Once one layer is opened up, the one inside can now receive the warmth and the light of the sun, and that too can open up. And the deeper you go into the lotus, the more beautiful are the petals, the more fragrant, and the more delicate they are. And that is a beautiful simile of the human being. Sometimes there's some very, very rough people in this world. They look rough, they look mean, but if you open them up, inside that outermost sheath, protecting themselves from the pain of life, you open them up because they trust you, they care for you. Inside you see these beautiful human beings. Many of you may have done that. You may have had a partner who's really been through hell, and you actually care for them, you love them. And little by little, slowly, they open up because they trust you and they're not so afraid anymore. And you see incredible beauty inside of them. And when you do, as a lover, as a partner, as a friend, then the amazing thing is that they see that beauty inside of them as well. They see they're not just a rough, nasty, bad person who's got no hope in this world. They see something much more. I like telling people who come on my retreats an anecdote which I only tell on retreats. That's why I'm going to tell these stories here, to actually just share these really great stories. I always mention that I make mistakes as well. This is again one of my stupid mistakes. This guy turned up to one of my retreats at Jhana, the opposite side of the road to Bodhinyana Monastery. But this guy was really big, really scraggly hair, and was covered with tattoos all over his body. And as soon as I looked at him, my mistake was judging him, stereotyping him. He looked like the leader of a bikie gang, not the sort of people who would come for a meditation retreat. So straight away I said, "Sir, you've got the wrong place. The prison farm is up the road in that direction." Totally stereotyped. I was totally wrong. He said, "No, I've joined up for the retreat." Okay, fair enough. I thought, well, okay, all sorts. But you know, this guy, on the outside, he really looked just rough. The sort of person you'd be afraid to meet in Northbridge on a Saturday night, you know, just by yourself. He was a really mean-looking guy. But he got the best meditation on that retreat. When he came to the interviews to tell me what he was doing, it's incredible, the bliss and the joy and the deep meditations he was getting. And he realized this guy had opened himself up, and inside was incredible beauty. And I was really admiring just his mind in his meditation. Excellent. That has shown me, like many other experiences, that everybody has that inside of them. So, you take the people you really don't like. the ones who give you the most trouble in this world, your mother-in-law. I don't know, poor mothers-in-law, give them a break. What about fathers-in-law? What about, these people who want to, so if you're having a problem in your dividing the will, and this person is taking all the money, or this other person is giving you a really hard time, or they're cheating you in business, or whatever it is, look, it's beautiful in them as well. If you can only actually make them see it. Oh, this story I wrote about in Open the Door of Your Heart, sometimes this makes me emotional because I remember this girl and she was, one of my heroes. I haven't seen her for a while, I don't know where you are, but, I really respect you, what you did. Because years and years ago she came to see me, and I think it must be about 20 years ago now. And she just came up after one of the talks and said, I just want to thank you and all the other monks. We never had nuns then. I want to thank you and all the other monks for all you've taught because you've saved my life. I said, how? And that's when she told her story. She said she started coming to this center 7 years previously. And she said the only reason she came to this center was to get out of the house, because she was a victim of very severe domestic abuse. Her husband was beating her regularly. And these were the days, when there wasn't hotlines, when domestic abuse happened and there's no place to go. There were places to go, but it wasn't really known. So this poor woman was just having to endure it. No place to go. And please don't judge, because sometimes when you're in that situation, she described it to me, you just can't stay there, but you still love that guy. And you still want to try, even though you're bruised all over. And you're too afraid to go out. You're like in the jail, but just the oppositely, going out of jail is even more frightening. So she was in this, and you can't think clearly. Sometimes you think, well, why can't you just leave? Look, you're not in a clear state of mind when that's happening. Emotional just turmoil. So she came here because every minute she was in this center, she wasn't being beaten up. That's what she told me. That's why she came. But what she heard here was really something she never expected, to see the beauty in her husband. And that's what she did. She said it took 7... If I'd have known about this, I'd have called the police, but she never said what was happening. She just kept on coming, sitting in the back, never coming to say anything. But then, what she heard, she practiced. Every time she saw her husband doing something respectable, reasonable, kind, she hugged him, kissed him, said thank you, reinforcing the very tiny shimmer of light of good behavior in him. She saw that he had some really beautiful qualities in him. And she told me it took him 7 years to change. 7 whole years. But he did. And she brought him to see me. He was a very nice, kind man. But this woman, she was something else. She was like an angel. But not an angel with like wings and just a donut on top of their head. She's one of these people who are incredibly strong and powerful and beautiful and kind. And she showed me her 2 children she'd had. Incredible that she had made her relationship from just rubbish to begin with. Most people, and when I say that story, I don't recommend you do that. She was really special, but it just shows you what's possible. That in that monster there was an angel, and she brought it out. And she deserves every happiness she gets from that relationship, from those kids. She earns it. A beautiful thing to do. Usually what would happen, break up the marriage, the kids have a few problems, guy goes to jail, one person never gets anywhere, the husband. Maybe you might think he deserves to be in jail. But look, what she did was to turn that monster into a really beautiful being. And her, she became even more beautiful. And 2 amazing kids, with a mother like that, wow, they're going to turn out to be something special. That is what was possible because she saw that inside her husband, that's what she heard here, there was something beautiful. And she saw that, she looked for it, she reinforced it, and he started seeing it too. What you see in other people is what they show you back. Beautiful, really, story. So it's there. And one of the reasons why we try and talk like this is encourage that this is a solution to big problems. The other solutions are sometimes they're just band-aids. This is the real stuff which really gets you out of this repeated bad behavior, negativity, thinking too much because you're coming from somewhere which is a little bit different than thoughts. A lot of this is unreasonable. Doesn't make any logical sense, but you feel it in the heart, there's a lot of truth there. Once you can do that with somebody else, amazing when you try it on yourself. That there's something beautiful inside each one of you. Anyone with addiction problems, other types of problems, depression, negativity, suicide, what are they doing that for? Because they can't see any beauty in themselves, or a lot of times in anybody else either. The self-destructive, sabotaging behavior of human beings. Because they can't see anything worth living for. They can't see the beauty in this life. They can't see the incredible greens and browns and yellows and purples on the hillside. You've lost that. You've lost the appreciation of beauty in this world. And no wonder people start looking for their pleasures, sort of in amassing wealth, in power, in sex, in movies, in methamphetamines, ice. What do kids do that for? If you can only teach them just where beauty really lies, there's more than enough happiness and beauty and energy and life. I get really high when I meditate, and it's not on methamphetamines. I still remember this experience I had once, many times, but this is the one which really stands out for me. I was visiting UK, and one of my friends, one of the monks, he'd managed to talk and cajole and write letters because he was one of the Buddhists in one of the jails in England to get a Buddha statue inside one of Her Majesty's prisons in England. Not just a small one, like a big one, a real one. And of course, they're easy to get. Ask any of the Buddhist people, if we're going to get a Buddha statue in, say, Casuarina jail, one of the prisons here in Perth, get a collection together and we'll be able to pay for that before tomorrow. Because people love, giving things like Buddhas, especially to a prison, to help people. And of course, you can imagine, you have Buddhas in people's gardens. Why? Because it makes them peaceful. I don't know when the last time I'm going off on a tangent here, but this is important. You know that Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of UK during the Second World War, had a Buddha statue next to his bed every night of that war? Not a crucifix, but a Buddha statue. We found that out once when one of our monks was visiting England, and the host wanted to take him to a castle. He was Australian. People have to see castles, but the castle was closed. So, what else can we do? The stately home of the wartime Prime Minister Churchill, we'll take you there. And that was open. And just apparently as you went into the entrance to that stately home where Winston Churchill lived, as soon as you went in there was a big painting, because Winston Churchill was also an artist. He painted this, a Buddha statue, a Burmese style. And so the monk asked the curator, what's this? He painted a Buddha statue, why? And the curator said, this was a painting of the statue which was by his bedside every day during the Second World War. He broke or he lost it somewhere, but he still has the painting. Why? Because imagine this, if you imagine like your stress, imagine being the leader of a country during that terrible, terrible war. And just how much stress and how much pain. One decision, thousands of people die. That's huge. And he had that statue next to him because it gave him peace, it gave him encouragement, kindness even. Look at that, and it would help him with his famous depression. So that was a fact, he had a Buddha statue there. And anyway, putting a Buddha statue into a prison, what a great idea, to maybe that might give some peace, some happiness, some hope to some of these very wounded people who end up in jail. So I was really into this. So I asked to go along for the opening ceremony. So I got a little invitation, went into the prison, I think it was Spring Hill Prison if I remember it correctly, somewhere in England, and went in there and they had a ceremony. And part of the Buddhist ceremonies, we walk around 3 times with candles and incense. We do that on our Wesak ceremony. And again, for those of you interested, any Muslims who go to Mecca, they also walk around the Kaaba 3 times too. Interesting, the same thing. They also wear white, just like the Buddhists do. There's a lot of similarities there, which would be great to find out where this all came from. But anyway, so there I was with my candles and incense, walking around this Buddha statue in a prison, and I was just so happy, so inspired. What an incredible achievement, a marvelous thing to do. And just like you would expect, there was a lot of onlookers, some of the prisoners wondering what the heck was going on. And I saw 2 of them through the corner of my eye, looking at me. And looking at my huge smile, because I was so happy and inspired. And I heard one of them say to the other, "See that monk there," meaning me, "he's on the gear." Because that's the only way they could interpret such happiness. And I wasn't. I was just on inspiration, joy, peace, happiness. You've got a still mind and things look so incredibly beautiful. So that's why I want to share that with you. How to be happy. You don't need to get happiness from drugs, from alcohol. I haven't taken alcohol for 45 years now, I think. Dry before no drugs. My happiness is just meditation, inspiration, joy, service. Get a huge amount of happiness that way. So much, I got too much, I want to share it. I see, and I look at myself, honestly, sometimes people get a bit weird. They say, Ajahn Brahm, you are what Dennis says in the back, skiting. Because I look at myself and say, this beautiful being inside here. But that's, you're being proud. You should not skite. You shouldn't say you're a beautiful person. Why the hell not? I'm just being honest. Why can't you acknowledge your beauty and goodness yourself? Because it's not done. We're not supposed to say how beautiful we are. Then you get a big ego. And that's not the case. You just get a bigger heart when you recognize your beautiful qualities. You've all got incredible amounts of beautiful qualities inside of you. I can see that right now. Please see it yourself. And then you stop for a little while, have a look inside. Don't run away from yourself. Say, wow, this is incredible, this is gorgeous, beautiful. Then, of course, you have confidence. You don't need to seek for happiness in drugs, alcohol. You've got more than enough inside of yourself. And you see, you have self-respect. You realize you're quite an amazing person. You've been born into this world. You've got this incredible mind and brain and body. There's amazing things you can do and achieve. Yeah, you make mistakes, but we learn from those mistakes. The mistakes makes us better. This forward failing, it's not something we're afraid of, but something, I made a mistake, I'm going to learn from that, I'm going to do better next time, really much better. And that makes you an incredible person, keeping on growing every day of your life. Every mistake, you become a better person as a result. Which means no depression anymore. Where's depression gone? No anger. How can you get anger at an incredibly wonderful, beautiful person? Just can't do it. You look at your wife, she makes a mistake. Oh, darling, that's natural. We all make mistakes. Learn from it. And I accept your mistakes. I will never punish you, but you're a human being, but underneath that mistake, like I said to somebody today, my old story, how big is the hand? Hand is so big I can't see anybody. That's my perspective problem. Put the hand where it belongs out here. Yeah, it's still the same size hand, but now I can see everybody in this world. Mistakes are like that. You make a mistake, you put it straight in front of you. Ugh, I'm terrible, because all I can see is my mistake. Put it where it belongs, to the end of the arm. It's just a small mistake, that's all. Give each other a break. That is called compassion. It's called love, respect, appreciation for the beauty inside you and in other people. Wow. No more arguments, no more depression, no more anger. Depression is just anger at yourself. No more lack of self-esteem. You go out into this world, super people, Superman and Superwoman, the superpowers of knowing this great source of energy and kindness and happiness right inside of you. Actually, because that's a really good I mentioned this, because next week, after my Friday talk, the next day I fly to Kuala Lumpur, and that's a talk I'm supposed to give about Buddhist Superman. So now I know what I'm going to talk about. So this is actually what you have, superpowers. Isn't that more important than flying through the air? Because this is how you really stop bad guys and bad girls. Just look at them and zap them with kindness. And then they can't detonate their suicide belt anymore. Oh, you're too kind to blow up. Oh, you really think I'm okay? Yeah. If you look in the library, I better finish off because I'm really just getting too high on this. If you look in the library, one of the people who watched these videos from, I think, Czechoslovakia, I think it was, they were an art student, and for their project, they had to do something, and their project was a cartoon, Superman cartoon, based on all of my stories. And of course, being like, one of these cartoons, a super person, always had to have the evil guy. And the evil guy had invented this death machine, this ray which would actually destroy the whole world. And so Superman comes along. He doesn't try and beat up the bad guy. Instead he says, wow, it's amazing. Your technological expertise, building a machine like this, it's so amazing. And the bad guy said, really? You like my death ray? I really admire it. Wow, that's the first time anybody's complimented me. Maybe I can get a job in other types of technology where I don't have to destroy the world. Yeah, I can help you find a job. And it was really quiche, but really good fun. And in the end of this Superman cartoon, the police came along to arrest this terrorist about to destroy the world. And Superman said, oh, please, remember what I told you, let go, let go. So they let the bad guy go. And that was the end of the cartoon. Oh, I thought that was really cute. So anyway, that's a little story today, the little talk today about recognizing the beauty inside yourself and other people and how to do it. It's not just a joke, not just a myth. Slow down and have a look. It's there. Open up your lotus. Now the warmth and light of the sun, by the way, is the mindfulness and kindness. The warmth of the sun, the kindness. The light of the sun, mindfulness. Mindfulness and kindness together, my kindfulness. I invented that word, and apparently there's kindfulness retreats being done now in the United States. Kindfulness. That's what opens up the lotus. And you see inside of you, in the people you live with, just like in the dog officers in the prison, inside of them is beauty. Just open it up and you'll see. Thank you for listening. Okay, so we got our questions here. Anyone from the audience? Questions from the audience? Yes. Yeah, your question from the audience first of all. You got a... Come on, guys. Is someone with a hand up? Question from the audience, first of all. Sydney. Yeah. From the audience, yes?
Yes, thank you so much for tonight. I love your talks and I have blissful meditations, but I'd like to share a little story that I feel is very, it's about seeing the beauty in people. I live in a very tiny unit and very close to my neighbour, and they've got a big shed. And drug addicts moved in, and there was a lot of screaming and yelling at 4 o'clock in the morning, this guy going crazy. So I called the police out, and it happened for quite a while. There was also enormous smoke. I was nearly smoked out. I think there was chemicals there. It was very bad smells. But however, and I mean, they had little children. I could hear this little screaming from the children. They'd be yelling at these children. They'd have wild parties. Anyway, the police came out and they said to get onto the council, and the health people, the environmental people visited these people. I kept chanting for these people, praying for them, and a year later there is no smoke, there is no wild parties, there is no screaming, no abuse, and they just have really nice, it's like normal family people, and I'm so grateful.
Great, well done. Very good. It can be done.
Absolutely.
But it takes a long time, a year.
Yeah.
But you know, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Just pushing these people to just another suburb, another house. It may be the house next to you next time. So anyway, from the United States, how can one balance between non-attachment and romantic love? Romantic love is loving how that other person makes you feel. You want them to be around all the time. You don't really love them. You love the way you feel in their presence. That's romance. But non-attached love is where you're just so happy that the other person's happy. Their happiness is what gives you a lot of joy. That's non-attached love. And you usually find that out when the person gets very sick and about to die. If it's romantic love, you feel heartbroken. The love of your life is about to depart this world. But if it's non-attached love, you can let them go with your blessing. We've had a wonderful time together, darling. So many years, great memories. Those will never be taken from me, but you will. You go with my blessing. Off you go into your next life. Non-romantic love is much higher. You can let people go. It's romantic love. You get very heartbroken just when they're about to go. From Adelaide, how does wise reflection, which is mental, move the heart towards a wholesomeness and waking? Wise reflection should not be done until your mind is still. Otherwise it just becomes more thinking. It's not reflecting with the mind, or the head rather, it's reflecting with the heart. From stillness. The difference is, if you look at a lake in the mountains when there's waves on the surface at night time, you can't see an accurate reflection of the moon and the stars in the heaven above. Because of the waves or ripples, the image is distorted. But if that lake is perfectly still, then you have an accurate, true image, a reflection, like in a mirror, of the moon and the stars. So that is what reflection is. It has to be in a still mind to really reflect without distortion, which is why we meditate and become really still, and so much beauty and so much happiness comes up. It's only when you're still you can reflect the beauty of that hillside. If you are moving, like in a car, or your mind is moving, whatever you see is distorted. It's not a real good reflection. And of course, every now and again when there is a beautiful full moon, like 2 weeks ago, you can go out to a lake, and often it's calm at night. It's so beautiful to see the reflection of the moon. In Japan, Korea, China, that was one of the most beautiful sights to see. The only way, the best way to view a moon is when it's reflected in a still lake. I'm asking you from Sydney, how does one overcome shyness and deep-rooted anger practically? I can intellectualize, but why not struggle to do this in every life? Shyness and deep-rooted anger. That's interesting that you join those two together. I say, I'm very shy. People don't believe me and I'm shy. Do you believe me? You say, no. I used to be shy as a kid, but when you let go of your sense of self and who you think you are, and you just go up and you just have fun. I try and teach the other monks about how to give public talks, because some of the young monks, you can talk with them for hours. And they talk all sorts of interesting stuff, good stuff, a lot of rubbish as well sometimes, but some good stuff as well. So why can't you do that in front of a microphone, in front of a camera where it's being streamed all over the world? It's the same thing. So when I always talk to people, I'm talking with friends, even if I've never seen them before. I see the beautiful part of them, then I talk to that, and then you're never shy anymore. Shy, lack of confidence, you haven't seen your beauty yet. So look in the beauty, and the shyness will disappear. What I was talking about today. And deep-rooted anger, practically, what you be angry about? Sometimes, people have done stupid things, they've made mistakes, like I judged that person to be a bikie when I'm a brilliant meditator. So don't get angry at that. So replace anger with laughter. So don't get angry at the stupidity of human beings in this world. Laugh at it. Because people are very, very stupid. so much, it gives so much reason for anger. I haven't told this story for a little while, here we go, because it's coming on to Christmas and New Year's soon. This one guy in Sydney some years ago, some of you know this story. In Sydney, it's the last story, I promise I'll shut up after this. It was Christmas, the office was having a Christmas party, he decided to stay behind for the Christmas party, had a few drinks, should not drive home. He decided, what's the chances of being stopped? The odds are in my favour. So he got in his car and he drove home. Unfortunately, his luck was out. He got stopped in this big roadblock in Sydney. They were targeting one road. Everyone going along that road got stopped. So he knew he was done. He'd probably lose his car, his licence, and big fine, because he was really over the limit. So he had to wait in turn. When it's his turn, in Sydney apparently then, he had to get out of the car before they give him the breathalyzer tube. So he got out of the car, it was his turn, he was about to take the breathalyzer tube, in his mouth, the sound of a car crash. One of the cars had come a bit too fast in the roadblock, it was a traffic obstacle, and it rear-ended another car. And the policeman heard that and said to this man, it's more important that I attend to this car accident than to check your blood alcohol. He took the breathalyzer away and said, get back into your car and drive home. He'd literally become within, half a second of getting caught. If he'd have blown into that tube, it would have been way over the limit. He thought, how lucky could you be? Apparently this was a true story. Next morning he woke up with a big hangover, because he'd been drinking. He woke up because somebody was ringing his doorbell, wouldn't stop. So he got some pyjamas on, staggered to the door. It was 2 New South Wales policemen at the door. Now, of course, whenever you see a policeman at the door, people usually get a bit afraid. But then, he thought, even though he was a bit groggy, I've done nothing wrong. Yeah, I was drinking last night, but they can't do anything because I'm not driving now. So he was confident. So he said, what do you want? And they said, can we look inside your garage, sir? He thought, why do they want to look inside my garage? Only my car there. Okay, sure. And he opened his garage door, and that's when he almost had a heart attack, because in his garage there was a police car. Not his car. When they said, get in your car and drive home, he was so drunk he got in the wrong car. That is how stupid people can be. So thank you very much. Good night. See you next week. Let's pay respect to Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Haven't? Oh, good. Arahant Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Suakato bhagavata dhammo dhammang namasami. Supatipano bhagavato sāvaka sangho sanghang namami.